I want to get into some of the cool stuff you guys are doing at Vimeo in a moment, and a lot of it is very cool. I spent a lot of the weekend, Vimeo were kind enough to give me a free trial, and I spent a lot of the weekend uploading videos of my son, because that's the only thing I really film. And now I feel like I can sell them to his grandparents, which is kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that model, and
they
will definitely pay up. But look, where I want to start is this. Vimeo is a company that is in, if I'm right, its third iteration. You've done video sharing, you were in the original content game for a bit, and you are now a software as a service company, or SaaS. And in your own words, you've gone from being a media company that invests in content to a technology company that invests in creators. Why is the current mode the right mode for Vimeo?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think any company, technology company in a space where consumer expectations are evolving and where the technology is evolving has to constantly look at their strategy. And for us, the reason it makes sense to focus on providing professional software and tools to creators is that the world has changed. And the way I see it is, it used to be that video was, really an exclusive craft. It was reserved for AV professionals, filmmakers, Hollywood studios. And now you look at social media and you think about yourselves as consumers, and you expect high quality Netflix-style content on your phone, on demand, and you expect it to be new and fresh from all the brands and businesses that you know. And so the reason it's so exciting is that there's a whole new class of creators that are just starting to need video. And that's small businesses, organizations, every school, every coffee shop. The same way those organizations and entities needed a website a few years ago, they all now have to have a video strategy if they want to reach their customers online. And so the demand is there, and the need for all of these companies to be able to have video strategies is there. But it's really, really hard for them to do it. So the supply isn't there. Because
why? Because of the actual production of a video
if you're a small business, you don't have the budget to hire a crew, and you don't have 2 months to make one video that has a shelf life of 4 days on Facebook. And you're not a filmmaker. You're not using advanced editing software. You need a very simple, affordable solution that enables you to make high quality video at scale for your business. And so I think we're in a really interesting era where the needs and the demands are there, the friction is too high, and we, Vimeo, through a combination of technology and our community and our experience in video, we're looking at that problem and saying we can solve this in a very fundamental way so that 5 years from now, any company, any person with very few taps or clicks is going to be able to have a successful video strategy.
But why are you looking at video as being the next big thing in terms of companies doing their own marketing and their own advertising? Because as a medium, it's existed for a long time. So why is it suddenly going to take off as as you say, like the websites of 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think the reality is it's just the most engaging format. And we see a lot of signals around this. So, we see Facebook and every social media platform now very explicitly prioritizing video in their newsfeed. They're publishing data that says, video will get 3 times more clicks, 4 times more clicks than a static image or text. We know that video increases conversion. It's an easier way in some cases to educate and train people. Live video, the desire to engage with your audiences in real time, is becoming even more important as workforces become more distributed and our audiences are all over the world. So all of these factors are just leading to the reality, which is the format itself is more flexible and engaging, and it performs better as a marketing vehicle. And I think the reason it sort of feels new is because the access to use it is new. Again, it's no longer that you have to be a filmmaker. Suddenly you can be a small business and you actually can make video, and now you have a social media platform to actually reach your audience.
All right, I want to go back in time a little bit to when you took over as CEO of Vimeo. So it's July 2017. You come into the CEO role, background in marketing, and you go to your staff, who are mostly engineers and mostly probably millennials, and you say, guys, what you've been doing is great. We've done all this great work, all the original content we've been kind of running hard into, but we're going to get rid of it all.
Yeah.
We're going to do something completely different. How did that go down?
Yeah. So look, I think first of all, we have a very transparent culture at Vimeo, and I think we were very transparent about why we were making a strategy shift. And it wasn't that hard to be able to say, listen, guys, we can do original content, but here's all the other players doing it. Here are their budgets. And are we really going to be able to launch a channel or a series of content that cannot be made anywhere else? That's a question mark. On the other side, all these billions of dollars going into content, that's good for video creators, right? There's more and more people making content who's focused on them. And I think the reality was we walked through the strategy, we walked through the addressable market, and at the end of the day, the team had to be bought in intellectually, right? They had to see the same signals that I saw and that the team, the investors at IAC saw, and they had to say, oh, this makes sense. This is a large market that no one else is focused on, that Vimeo is uniquely positioned to serve. And so it was really just about engaging in that discussion and sharing the same signals that we saw.
And IAC, which is the kind of umbrella company under which Vimeo sits, along with many other companies, some media companies, some consumer-facing, last year they started to break out your results separately, which was taken as a sign by people like us that potentially Vimeo was going to be a standalone public company. Is there any sort of plan in place to come out from IAC and be like some of their other companies? Expedia, an obvious one, who have come out and been standalone public companies.
Look, I think IAC obviously has a playbook that they've sort of executed on over the last 20 years. I think there's been 10 public companies that have come out of IAC, about $50 billion of value created. And typically the playbook is identify a category that is large, where there is no winner, and be quite aggressive in investing in growth to win in that category. And that is absolutely what you're seeing IAC do with Vimeo, and specifically in the category of professional video. In terms of actually going public, at the end of the day, it's really about attacking the market opportunity. Today, we have the funding and the support that we need from IAC. They've got cash on their balance sheet, and they've been investing in our growth. We just announced an acquisition a few weeks ago. And so from my perspective, as long as we've got the resources and the ability to go after this market, that's really all that matters. And if that changes or we need to be broken out or spun off in order to better access markets, then we will.
Talk to me about the M&A, because as you say, you recently announced a deal. It's, I think, the second you've done in quick succession. Not to sort of stick on the millennial or even Gen Z question, but what are some of the challenges of integrating these companies that are, where the average age of the staff is quite young, potentially their own objectives about their career and what they want from the workplace is not necessarily consistent with a company like IAC, which is a much more mature, established, traditional corporate?
Yeah, look, I think integration is obviously the trickiest thing to nail with any M&A. And in particular for Vimeo, most of the acquisitions we do are really about the underlying technology and the IP, which means that it's actually very important that we integrate quickly. So we need engineers building off of the same code. We need them looking at the same UX and user experience. So the integration is extremely important. And I think a couple lessons that, frankly, I've learned in sort of the experience of doing that is it's a very delicate balance between integrating cultures and teams and actually letting teams be autonomous and move fast. And we've sort of made mistakes there in the past where maybe we don't actually force the teams to work closely together in the same code quickly enough, and then vice versa, where we sort of centralize everything and it almost slows things down. So there's a very delicate balance there. And I think as it relates to teams and culture, one of the interesting things is we've been doing more M&A outside the US, which means that the cultural differences can actually be even more stark. And I think what I've learned there and what we've seen there is, it's never about you acquire a company and they sort of adjust their culture for Vimeo. What actually happens is Vimeo's culture changes, right? And it really comes down to what are the things that they're doing exceptionally well in their culture that we actually need to bring to the parent company And then what are the things that we offer that's complementary or amplifies their culture that we can bring to them?
But how do you instill that in your current workforce? Because that's a tricky one to get right.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, we're a company and this is our culture, but our culture is always subject to change because we're going to bring in other stuff and adopt their best practices.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's true. And one of the things, I always get asked about organizational structure and sort of like how we organize as a company. And I've always said, we don't have a philosophy on org structure. We organize to do what is best for the business. And it's the same thing with culture, which is, we aren't going to be dogmatic that this is the culture, and you have to move to it. The culture is fluid. It represents the people who work with us. And if those people change and there's, new processes and new ways of doing things that make more sense, that make us more productive, that make us more likely to be successful as a business, then we will change. And I think actually a lot of millennials in particular are very comfortable with that fluidity. And in many ways they appreciate it because it signals a flexibility and a self-awareness that I think is sort of a good fit for what a lot of them are looking for in their careers.
I like it. It's like the anti-frat house model.
Yes.
GE could have learned a lot from this when they were integrating their empire. So I want to look forward now. We sort of have some idea of what the typical Vimeo user is today. And we've talked a lot about creators. Take us forward 5 years. Who are going to be the people who are sort of subscribing to the service? Because you do talk about a very large addressable market.
Yeah, so I think, historically, our core customer base have really been video professionals, filmmakers, videographers, agencies. And what we're seeing is this, as I said, this shift more towards small to medium-sized businesses and even large organizations that are now relying on video as really like the primary communication format. And so I think what you're going to see, and we already see it in our base today, and we expect that that's the fastest growing part of our base, that mix shift will continue. But I think what you're going to start seeing is it will be everyone from the sort of solo entrepreneur to the 50-person startup to the Fortune 500 company that will be accessing Vimeo's tools. And we've even started building out an enterprise business where we offer much more complex and advanced features and services to larger companies. Actually, things like secure live streaming, for example. So you're running a conference like this, you want to be able to, behind the sort of right security with the right controls, live stream to your audience. Another sort of more enterprise feature is we actually enable any content creator or media company to build their own Netflix. So think of it as you can stand up your own branded website, iOS and Android apps, connected TV apps on Amazon, Roku, and Xbox, charge whatever you want, effectively build your own OTT channel, over-the-top channel, or Netflix. So those are examples of like more advanced use cases that we would never have previously focused on if we were really just serving a sort of a single individual.
But what you're saying, right, is you have all of the infrastructure in place, you have the people. So why not get into the content business? Everyone else is, right? Content is the biggest game in town right now.
Look, I think the honest truth is I think we have a better business in SaaS. The reality is, content is expensive, and what you really have to be great at to have a great, successful sort of Netflix is you have to be great at the content, you have to be great at the marketing. Right now, you also have to be great at the technology. What we're basically doing is we're saying we're going to take care of the technology for you. So you don't even need to worry about the technology, and you focus on making great content and marketing to your audience. Yeah, and I think, look, if you think about Vimeo's roots, for the last 15 years, we've been investing in a video player, in best-in-class video upload, transcode, streaming. A lot of our DNA and our roots are actually in the technology side, and it is not an easy feat to sort of master it. And so for us, we look at it as we have this amazing technology platform that we can now bring to so many more people. And instead of making a bet that we're going to be the Netflix, we don't need to make a bet. If there's 50 Netflixes or there's one, we can power that technology.
Now, I mentioned that IAC have started to break out the Vimeo results separately and looked at the Q1 results for this year. The losses are increasing because you're spending a lot of money on marketing, right? Getting the product out there. One way you could bring money back in would be through advertising, which Vimeo traditionally has said we're not going to do. Is there a temptation with the number of eyeballs you now have to say, well, we're going to have some advertising in our model?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly there's always temptation, and we get asked the question a lot, but it's actually a very easy answer for us because, again, the second we think about advertising, it means that we are a viewing destination, which means our incentive is to bring content onto Vimeo and keep eyeballs on Vimeo. And that is not the business model of a SaaS platform. A SaaS platform is agnostic, right? We actually say, you are a customer, we want to help you get eyeballs everywhere. So we built tools that actually allow our users to natively publish their videos with a click to YouTube, to Facebook, to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to their own website. And the value that we offer is that we're agnostic, is that we're saying we don't care about bringing people to Vimeo because we're not monetizing those eyeballs. So I would actually say for us at this point, it's not really an option that fits with our strategy, and it's intrinsic to the business model, which is for us to be successful as a SaaS platform, we really can't be tempted by this sort of other thing. So we have no plans. It's not something that's sort of even remotely on the radar.
Okay. I want to finish up on something I mentioned earlier on, which was you said that when you were making this transition to being a SaaS company, that you had gone from being a media company to a technology company investing in creators. Tech and trust is a huge issue of our time at the moment. You now, as a CEO of a tech company, you have a seat at that table. Big tech has shown itself to be pretty abject in looking after consumers' data, in sort of doing right by its customers in a lot of ways. What do you see being inside the industry? What changes do you see being made to try and actually correct some of that bad behavior?
Look, I think for any open UGC or user-generated content platform, clearly, we as companies have a greater responsibility that I don't think was openly acknowledged or even, frankly, as top of mind from leaders of those companies as they should have been. And the discourse that's happening today is important and it's good frankly, as a forcing function for leaders in positions like mine, that we are accountable for things beyond just sort of the business metrics that we track. I think that you will see a combination of two things. I think you will see more of that responsibility being driven internally by the platforms themselves. But I also think these are businesses, we all respond to incentives, and we will need to be held accountable in clear ways. And I think really the way we're all going to get comfortable with the role that platforms like this play is when both of those things happen. And I think they have to happen, meaning it has to be driven internally by the company as well as through external mechanisms.
Who enforces that, the accountability? Because the government have proven pretty woeful at doing that themselves. But whether they even understand the issues is up for debate.
Yeah, look, I think I agree that there's work to be done for the government to play that role. But from my perspective, as a CEO even of one of those companies, I think it's an important role to play. And I think I think it has to come from both. I don't think you want to be in a situation where you're really just relying on the sort of goodwill and intent of the leaders. And by the way, I will also add, you're also seeing more of that pressure coming internally from employees. And so I think ultimately, all of these different sort of pressure points are probably good things. It makes it trickier to make decisions as a leader, but again, we are operating in a tricky world and the responsibility is large, so bring it on.
On that note, Anjali Sud, thank you so much for joining me.